I'm in Menlo Park with Ted Mitchell, who is president of the California School Board, and we're here to talk about Race to the Top. So, Ted, thanks for agreeing to talk.
John, it's always a pleasure. Good to see you.
So, what do you think the board's role will be in Race to the Top, and how active do you think you'll be as chairman?
I think that Race to the Top is an incredible opportunity for California and for all of the other states. I think the board is very interested and heard our first report at our last meeting from the Secretary of Education's office and the superintendent on Race to the Top. So the board wants to be very engaged, and I think first in an advisory capacity, helping to think about what our application might embody. But second, and specifically, as you know, there's an important component of Race to the Top that challenges states to adopt high, internationally benchmarked standards. And the care and feeding of the standards and the assessments that go along with that are core to the board's responsibilities. So I expect that we'll be very deeply involved, especially in the discussion of standards and the next generation assessment program.
So that's one of the prerequisites, I believe, for the California to even be qualified to apply is to agree to adopt these benchmark standards or common standards. And California is one of 47 states that's participating. Now, you and Superintendent of Instruction Jack O'Connell have expressed a little bit of reservation before you say yes to that. Could you explain that?
Sure. I think that in any national evaluation of standards, and the Thomas Fordham Institute is the group that regularly looks at that, California's standards are regarded as among the very top in the country. So our standards are high, they're challenging. Unlike many states, we've not lowered our standards in order to indicate that students are proficient. We've kept our standards very high, and that's been a challenge for the state. So we have agreed, along with the 46 other states, to participate in the development of these high internationally benchmarked standards. But before we sign on to those standards, and I think that I speak for the governor, for the Secretary of Education, and for Superintendent O'Connell, we want to make sure that the standards we're signing on to are every bit as rigorous, every bit as demanding, and every bit as challenging as the ones we have now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's time, though, to take a look at some of California's standards? Is this an opportunity after it's been, nearly a decade in some cases?
I think that any giant social change like the one that accompanied the standards-based reform movement needs to be revisited from time to time. And so yes, I think that it's healthy for us to ask whether California's standards continue to challenge students in the ways that are appropriate given the evolution of disciplines on the one hand, and the evolutions of the needs for students to be fluent in a variety of disciplines for the 21st century. So I'm in favor of us taking a look at our standards, but want to be very, very careful that in doing so we don't water down what has been a signal achievement of the California education system.
So standards and assessments, that's one of 4 areas that I believe Secretary Duncan wants the state to address. The other ones are data and teacher performance and evaluation and low-performing schools. So how would you like to see the state address these areas?
I would hope that California would approach this from an integrated point of view and think about these as all fitting together as a way of moving California's education system from where it is to sort of a next generation model. For my money, thinking about how to intervene in the lowest performing schools and using those low performing schools as a focal point for changes in the way we think about and reward teacher effectiveness, as a focal point for how we use data to improve instruction and hold the adults in the system accountable, and to think about the initial deployments of some of these new assessment tools and technologies. That seems for the elements of the Race to the Top application, and so I think that there's an enormous opportunity there.
So there's particular attention on the lowest performing 5% of schools. And the state school board and Jack O'Connell reached an agreement a couple years ago that has been criticized as sort of letting districts off the hook. And the secretary this time has prescribed much more, I think, or recommended in the draft, much more intensive involvement, including replacement of the principals and staff, perhaps taking over by charter schools. How do you think that the state should involve itself in the administration or supervision of low-performing schools?
So a couple of years ago, when the first tranche of districts in California entered program improvement at a level that demanded corrective action under No Child Left Behind, we worked collaboratively, the board, the secretary's office, and the superintendent, to create a measuring stick that would allow us to identify districts that were in pretty severe need of intervention, all the way down to districts who might have been in that program improvement status because they had missed on the number of students taking the exam. And based on that, we prescribed, if you will, a variety of different levels of intervention. And the highest level of intervention was actually pretty severe in the world of public schools. We assigned those school districts a district improvement team. Many of those district improvement teams came from the county offices of education, and basically said that they would come in, they would take a look, they would not only recommend, but they would require actions on the part of the school districts to improve student achievement. What will be interesting is that now this coming board meeting will be able to assess the results of that intervention. So I think that the tightening that the Secretary is recommending comes in California at just the right time, when we are able to assess the effectiveness of our first generation intervention strategies. So I look forward to being able to think about the results of that intervention in the light of the Secretary's new recommendations.
I know that the authorization of having charters to come in is one of the more controversial aspects of that. What do you think the role of charter schools might be in coming into low-performing schools?
I think the charter schools have a role to play in providing educational choices for kids who are currently in low-performing schools. And in some instances, there may be some charter providers who are interested in going in and taking over a school site. And in other instances, as we've seen in Los Angeles and in the Bay Area, there are charter operators who are interested in creating schools of choice around low-performing schools. And in that sense, it's more of a greenfield operation where they're creating new schools. In the first instance, it's more of a turnaround. And I think that I worry that there is more demand for turnaround operators than there is supply. And we have to be very careful about over-promising in the charter community about the ability to turn around those schools, because those schools are troubled not just because something happened on Tuesday that's caused a problem. Those are persistent, long-term problems that are school problems, that are socioeconomic problems, and they're very, very complex.
I must say that as president and CEO of New Schools Venture Fund, you have directly involved in charter. And have you seen good turnaround applications with charters that in fact you're involved with?
Yes, there are great examples of very, very powerful turnarounds. In Philadelphia, Mastery Charter Schools has done a remarkable job turning around several seriously underperforming Philadelphia schools. I think that the experiment that's ongoing today with Green Dot in Los Angeles with the turnaround of Locke is another. And a Chicago example that's near and dear to Secretary Duncan's heart is the Academy of Urban School Leadership, AUSL, that's worked in collaboration with then Superintendent Duncan to turn around Chicago's public schools. So we do have examples of charter schools that have moved successfully into the turnaround market. And I would hope, and I would hope that the New Schools Venture Fund would be in a position to support the further growth of those enterprises.